The rain came hard and straight, like pins from a black sky. At the gate of the North Carolina Air Base, water poured in ribbons down the metal skin of the old F-4 Phantom. Its paint had long since dulled, its fuselage speckled with rust blooms and bird droppings, the number 2 to 4 barely visible along the nose. An old man stood before it. He wore a faded green poncho and a ball cap so worn the fabric along the brim had frayed to white threads. His name, stitched faintly above the jacket pocket, Carter. Jim Carter. 83 years old. His boots, once polished to inspection standards, now sagged and pooled with rainwater around the soles. But his hands moved with care. He wiped the Phantom's nose slowly, methodically, the motion neither rushed nor hesitant. Just right. As if it mattered. As if someone was still watching. "Does he think that plane's going anywhere?" a voice said behind him. Tyler Jennings, 21, crouched under the edge of the hangar roof, his camouflage fatigue still crisp from basic, a styrofoam coffee cup steaming in his hands. He watched Carter with a puzzled half-smile, the kind young men wear when they don't understand what they're seeing. His friends had told him about the old guy. Phantom Jim, they called him. Came out in all weather, same time every morning, same plane. Tyler shook his head, sipping his coffee. "Crazy," he muttered. But Carter didn't flinch. Didn't turn. He kept polishing the battered nose cone, each circle slow and deliberate, as if revealing something underneath. His mouth moved slightly, soundless. Tyler squinted. Was he talking to the plane? The rain deepened. A rivulet ran down Carter's sleeve and dropped off his elbow. He took a small step back, his cloth now folded over his knuckles, and dabbed gently at the Phantom's side like a man tending a wound. The wind pulled at his coat. But Carter held his stance, eyes fixed on the metal. Silent. Steady. Like memory itself. "My name is Jim Carter. I live in a modest house just off Bragg Road, 10 minutes from the base. It's the kind of home they built in the 50s, low roof, narrow porch, one stubborn magnolia in the yard. Paint flakes from the siding. The air inside smells faintly of coffee and old paper. There's no one else living there now. Each morning, I wake up before dawn. I wash my face, comb what hair's left, and brew a small pot. Then I check the weather, doesn't matter much, but I check it. I open the hall closet and take out the same green poncho, the same boots I wore back then, and the same cloth folded neatly in my flight bag. I drive to the gate. They know me. Nobody says much anymore. They used to ask questions, "Sir, are you authorized to be on this side?" or "You need help with something?" But over time, they stopped. They got used to me. The man with the cloth. The one who talks to the plane. They think I'm broken. Maybe I am. The F-4 sits near the base entrance, a static display from another age. They mounted her up on steel pylons after she was decommissioned. Painted her like new. Shined the glass. Put up a little sign beside her, McDonnell Douglas F-4 Phantom II, tail number 7424. I never read the sign. I know what she is. I know every rivet, every scar on her skin. I know the left rudder tends to stick. I know the tiny dent under the right wingtip from that bad landing at Euban. I know the hum she made at cruising altitude when the canopy seals would flutter just so. That sound always made me feel like we were holding the sky together. And I know what happened the last time she flew. It's been 36 years since Vietnam. 35 since I lost them. I don't tell people that part. They wouldn't understand. These days, everything's about medals, parades, and hashtags. They think remembering means speeches and flags. But that's not what remembering is. Remembering is quiet. Remembering is not looking away. So I come every day. Rain, heat, frost. I wipe down the nose, the wings, the tail. I check for bird droppings, for water pooling where it shouldn't. I talk to her. Not just to her. There were 3 of us in that squadron. Phantom flight. We flew out of Da Nang, mostly night ops. Jake Evans was the Joker. Texas boy. Couldn't fly straight to save his life, but God help you if you needed cover fire. Michael, Doc, Lowry was the quiet one, used to read Steinbeck between sorties. I was the flight lead. Not because I was the best, but because someone had to be. April 9, 1971. Call sign Phantom 2-4. We took off at 0137. Standard recon with a side assignment for air support if needed. We never got past the ridge. It wasn't even enemy fire. Something in the hydraulics, maybe. Or a fuel line rupture. The last thing I remember is a flash, then the canopy blowing. I came to in the jungle, face down in the mud. Both legs numb. My helmet cracked. My chute tangled in the trees above. I screamed for them, called every name I knew. Nothing came back. Later they told me they only found pieces. Wreckage scattered like dry bones. The black box lost in the valley. Official report, mechanical failure, no foul play suspected. But I know what I lost. I made one request before they retired her. That they bring back 7424, the airframe that survived the last flight. I asked that she stay here, near me. Not in a museum. Not in some hangar. Out where the weather could touch her, where people could see her scars. And I wrote a letter. If I don't come back, let Phantom 2-4 be the place where I can be remembered. I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of being erased. I gave that letter to a base clerk in 71, told him to file it. I never asked again if it was still there. Never had to. I came home. Got older. Married once, for a while. No kids. Didn't really know how to talk after I left the service. People would ask, what was it like, and I'd say, loud. They'd laugh. I didn't mean it to be funny. So I built a life around the things I understood. Planes. Discipline. Order. Every morning, I return to that phantom. Every morning, I remember. Some days, people stop. They ask about the plane. I say she's from the old days. They nod and walk on. Some laugh. Some whisper. The young ones have started calling me Phantom Jim. I've heard them at the PX, chuckling behind shelves. Old man still polishing that rust bucket like it's going to fly off again. I don't respond. What would I say? They weren't there. They don't know what it means to come back alone. To come back at all. Tyler Jennings wasn't unkind. Just young. Like most at that age, he confused silence with weakness, repetition with senility. His own father had never served, so the world of men like Jim Carter seemed distant, more artifact than influence. Still, he noticed the old man. Everyone did. Phantom Jim, he'd whisper, smirking with the other mechanics. There he goes again. Swabbing the ghost plane. Once, he joked, maybe he's trying to buff it back into the air. That got a good laugh in the hangar. Even the NCOs chuckled. No one corrected him. It became a game. Tyler started imitating Carter's gait. He'd hunch his shoulders, shuffle his boots across the floor, mock polish the side of a rolling toolbox while whispering dramatic monologues, "We fly again at dawn, boys." Harmless, he thought. But every joke plants a seed. It grew quietly, passed between chuckles and sideways glances. A narrative built itself like rust beneath paint, that Jim Carter was just an eccentric. A fixture. Something between nostalgia and a liability. Then one day, everything changed. It was a Thursday. Rain again. Always rain. Tyler was in the maintenance bay when Sergeant Klein walked in with a clipboard and a stiff expression. "Security's doing a policy sweep," he said. "Someone flagged that the old man's been accessing the gate display without clearance." "You mean Phantom Jim?" someone muttered. Klein didn't smile. "Regulations say only authorized personnel are allowed to interact with static displays." Tyler raised an eyebrow. "You gonna tell him to stop wiping a museum piece?" "It's not a request," Klein said. Command signed off. That afternoon, Jim was approached by base security. A young officer in a poncho read the order from a laminated sheet. "I'm afraid we can't allow continued contact with display aircraft, sir." Jim stood there quietly, his cloth still in his hand, water trickling down his cheek like sweat. "Regulations," the officer repeated. "It's not personal." Jim didn't argue. He simply folded his cloth, placed it back in his bag, and nodded. Then he turned, walked back to his truck, and drove off. No ceremony. No protest. Just silence. The next morning, the F4 was still there, but something had shifted. The nose was streaked with pollen. Dust clung to the undercarriage. Bird droppings dotted the fuselage. No one cleaned it. No one spoke of it. After a week, weeds began to grow around the display's base. Rain pooled in the same places Jim used to wipe dry. The wind caught a loose metal plate near the intake, making it rattle like teeth in an old jaw. Tyler walked past it one morning and stopped. He didn't know why. He stood there for a minute, watching the water stream down the Phantom side. It didn't look noble anymore. Just abandoned. Like a forgotten monument in a place too busy to remember what it once honored. He shifted his weight, uncomfortable. Then he muttered, "Looks like hell." The next day, someone taped a laminated warning sign on the fence post, "No unauthorized access. Violators subject to disciplinary action." No one noticed the missing coin that had once been affixed beneath the tail. A challenge coin, dulled by decades, glued quietly in place. Jim had placed it there the day they mounted the display. Tyler noticed its absence, but said nothing. He started dreaming about the plane. Not nightmares. Just strange images. A jungle burning. A cockpit empty. A voice calling from far away, always just before waking. He stopped joking. Weeks passed. The weather stayed wet. One night, while walking back from the mess, Tyler paused under the dim floodlight near the gate. The plane loomed above him. A predator caught in mid-pounce. It had always looked powerful to him, even grounded. But now it just looked tired. He squinted through the rain. Something was different. A small smear, barely visible. Like someone had tried to wipe part of the nose. A circle, faintly cleaner than the rest. Like memory trying to make itself seen again. He looked around. No Jim. No cloth. Just silence. Tyler backed away slowly, his heart heavy with something he didn't yet have words for. He walked straight to the barracks and lay awake until morning. Colonel Spencer had always believed in the chain of command. He believed in rules, in protocol, in systems that kept order. But he also believed in looking beneath the obvious. That's what made him good at his job. That's what had kept him alive through 2 tours. And lately, something had been bothering him. It wasn't the aircraft. It was the absence. He'd passed by that gate display for years, rarely thinking twice. But now that it stood unpolished, uncared for, something about it pulled at him. Like a grave left untended. One afternoon, he asked his adjutant, who used to maintain the Phantom out front. "An old pilot, sir." "Civilian." "Retired." "Jim Carter." "He authorized?" The adjutant shrugged. "No record of it." But he came for years. We let it go. He stopped showing up a few weeks back. Why? Security change. New regs. Someone flagged him. Spencer frowned. Flagged for what? Cleaning a plane? Technically, yeah. The colonel stared out the window. Rain ran in lines down the glass. He didn't say anything for a long time. Later that week, he asked to see the archive files on tail number 7424. The request bounced through 3 departments before someone from Historical Affairs finally led him into a storage room behind the base museum. A narrow cabinet stood in the corner, labeled Decommissioned Airframes, 1970s. He opened it. Inside, thin folders, some water-damaged, some crisp. He found the one marked F4 Phantom II, S/N7424. He flipped through reports, flight logs, maintenance records. Then he found the envelope. It was yellowed, creased at the corners. Handwritten. To whom it may concern, it began. If I don't come back, let Phantom 2-4 be the place where I can be remembered. I'm not afraid to die. I'm afraid of being erased. The signature was clear, Captain James M. Carter, USAF. Taped to the letter was a photo, black and white, faded to gray. 3 pilots stood on the tarmac, arms slung across each other's shoulders. Helmets at their hips. Smiling. Carter was in the center. The backs of the other 2 had names scrawled in pencil, Evans, Lowry. Only one came home. Spencer sat down hard on the bench. The room felt colder than it had a moment before. He read the letter again. Then he stood and left the archives in silence. That evening, Spencer found Carter's address through base personnel records. The file was marked, retired, honorably discharged. There was no note about his daily visits. No acknowledgement of the years he'd spent preserving a symbol everyone else had forgotten. The next morning, Spencer drove out himself. The house was small, unremarkable. A cracked birdbath in the yard. A flagpole leaning slightly to one side, no flag flying. He knocked. After a long pause, the door creaked open. Carter stood in a gray sweater, the same one from the old photographs. He didn't look surprised. "Colonel," he said. "Captain," Spencer replied quietly. They stood in the doorway for a moment, the air between them heavy with things not yet said. "I read your letter," Spencer finally said. Carter's eyes didn't move. "Most don't." "I found the photo. Evans. Lowry. That was Phantom Flight. We left as 3, Carter said. I came back alone." He stepped aside, and Spencer entered. The home was neat. Sparse. On the mantel, a single-framed photo of the aircraft. Beside it, 3 coins laid out in a row, weathered and dull. "I talked to them," Carter said, almost to himself. "They listen." Spencer didn't interrupt. He understood now. Understood the silent pilgrimage. The care. The cloth. The whispers in the rain. It hadn't been eccentricity. It had been grief. Vigil. Memory. A man keeping a promise when no one else remembered it had been made. That afternoon, Spencer made several calls. Quiet ones. He spoke to the base commander. To public affairs. To the curator of the museum. No red tape, no press. Just a simple request. That a gathering be held. No podiums. No speeches. Just memory. A week later, under a clear morning sky, base personnel gathered near the F4. Mechanics in oil-stained uniforms. Airmen in dress blues. Officers in quiet clusters. The plane had been cleaned, carefully, respectfully. Carter stood at the edge of the crowd. He hadn't asked for this. He hadn't prepared anything. Spencer stepped forward. He held the letter in one hand. He read it aloud. No one moved. No one whispered. And when he finished, he stepped back. Carter approached the aircraft slowly. In his hand, he held a single coin. He placed it gently on the wing, the metal catching the sun for a moment before it settled. "I lost them over the jungle," he said. "As long as I live, they will not be forgotten." Then he stepped back into the crowd. No one applauded. They just stood with him. Still. Together. The base commander didn't make a speech. He simply nodded at Carter as he passed, then walked to the edge of the gathering and folded his hands behind his back. They let the silence speak first. Tyler stood near the perimeter, cap in hand. He hadn't been ordered to attend. He came on his own. He watched Jim Carter step away from the wing, the coin left gleaming on the dull metal, and something shifted inside him, an understanding so heavy and so quiet it made him feel suddenly small. Carter hadn't been polishing a memory. He had been tending to a grave. The revelation moved slowly through the ranks. From officers who had seen their own comrades vanish into clouds of dust, to young recruits who had only known war through pixels and policy. Now they saw it. Not a relic. A monument. A promise. Colonel Spencer stepped forward again. He held the photo between two fingers. The faces faded but clear. "This is not a ceremony," he said, and Captain Carter didn't ask for any of this. He looked out at the crowd. But some things, once seen, can't be unseen. That plane is not a display. It's a burial marker. For Evans. For Lowry. And for everyone who didn't come home. Every day Jim Carter came here, he kept that promise alive. He turned to Carter. "Sir, we failed to notice. We will not fail again." Tyler stepped forward. Slowly. He hadn't spoken to Carter before. Not directly. He felt the weight of all the things he'd said behind the man's back. The mimicry. The dismissal. The laughter. And now he stood a few feet away, boots wet from the grass, hands shaking slightly. "I didn't understand," he said. I'm sorry." Carter looked at him. And then nodded once. It was enough. That evening, a quiet order was passed down, effective immediately. The Phantom would be redesignated a memorial site. Access would be open to all base personnel. A logbook would be placed beneath the wing for those who wished to leave notes, names, tokens. But more than that, a new tradition was proposed. Spencer made the request official. Each day, at sunrise, a different airman or woman would be assigned to care for the aircraft. No ceremony. Just one person. One cloth. 1 hour. Tyler volunteered first. He showed up the next morning before dawn. The cloth in his hand was the same one Carter had used, folded tight, edges worn. Carter was there too. He didn't intervene. Just watched. Tyler worked in silence. He didn't wipe aimlessly. He started with the tail, then the flaps. Then the canopy. Just like Carter had. His hands were steady. Halfway through, he paused. He placed his hand against the cold metal and whispered something. Carter didn't ask what he said. Didn't need to. 2 weeks later, the base erected a small plaque near the aircraft's nose. It was simple. No fanfare. Just brushed steel with 7 words. Carter Phantom Memorial. Phantom Flight, Never Alone. Below it, a second line. They bring people home. Carter read it once, then walked a circle around the plane. He touched the wing. Looked up at the sky. Then sat on the bench nearby. Not to watch. To rest. Others came. Veterans from nearby towns. family members. Children with questions. A group from a local school arrived one afternoon, and a girl, no older than 10, touched the plaque gently and asked, "Did he really fly this one?" "Yes," her teacher said. "And he flew it for others." Tyler stayed with Carter most days now. He'd begun visiting the old man at home, helping him clean gutters, mow the grass. They didn't talk much. But when they did, it was real. "I used to think service ended when the uniform came off," Tyler said once. Carter just raised an eyebrow. Tyler chuckled. "Yeah. I was wrong. Sometimes they'd sit under the Phantom's wing in the evening, the floodlights casting long shadows. They didn't always clean. Sometimes they just remembered." Spencer came by one night after duty. He brought a coin from his own first deployment and pressed it into Carter's palm. "I never told anyone this," Spencer said, "but I lost a man out there. Iraq. 2006, I always thought maybe I didn't do enough." "You came back," Carter said quietly. Spencer nodded. Carter closed his hand around the coin. Then stood, walked to the aircraft, and laid the coin beside the one he had placed months ago. "You're not alone," he said. Neither of them said anything more. The wind moved over the tarmac. Somewhere above, a plane passed, invisible in the blue. Just the sound left behind, a reminder. That night, Tyler walked Carter back to his truck. "I think they're proud of you," Tyler said. "They're not gone," Carter replied. "I just carry them now." The base changed after that. Not dramatically. Just quietly. People stopped when they passed the Phantom. Some left notes. Others just nodded. But no one laughed anymore. And each morning, without fail, one person stood with cloth in hand, polishing the skin of the old aircraft under the rising sun. And every now and then, when the light hit just right, it looked like the Phantom was flying again. 6 months passed. The days turned brighter, the wind softer. The Phantom still stood at the gate, her paint touched up, her frame tended daily. But now she wore a different kind of shine, one born not of maintenance, but of memory. The base had changed around her. No longer an afterthought, the aircraft had become a waypoint. Recruits paused beside her on their way to chow. Veterans lingered longer on visits. Officers made quiet detours to pass the site. Even the MPs began signing off duty logs with a final loop past the display. The Carter Phantom Memorial had entered the base's vocabulary like a sacred rhythm, soft, unspoken, but essential. On the first Sunday of each month, a name was read. Someone who'd served. Someone who hadn't made it home. Someone whose life had left a mark but whose story risked being forgotten. A folded paper. A single name. Read aloud. No eulogies. No flags. Just the name. Then silence. Carter always stood beside the wing during these readings. He didn't speak. He just listened. Tyler became his shadow. Not out of duty anymore, but something closer to devotion. He'd learned how to polish the metal without scarring it. How to wipe water without streaking. How to place the cloth just right after the final pass. He wore a new patch on his shoulder now. It read, "Carter's Crew." It started as a joke among a few young airmen. A handmade patch. Simple white stitching on black. But it spread. Others asked for it. Then it was official. Base Command approved it, an informal unit insignia for volunteers who tended the aircraft. Each recruit who joined got a cloth. Each cloth bore 3 stitched initials inside the corner: JC, JE, ML, Carter, Evans, Lowry. One morning, a female recruit knelt beside the aircraft and gently tucked a small note into the gap under the wing. On it, 3 words, "Thank you, Captain." It stayed there. No one removed it. Then the day came. They called it Legacy Day. The base commander ordered a formal ceremony, but Carter asked for something quieter. And so they kept it small. Just after dawn, as the sky turned that low orange that streaks across wet tarmac, the crowd assembled near the Phantom. No stage. No microphone. Just a podium placed beside the wing, and a folding chair for Carter. He sat with his hands folded, cap on his knee. Tyler stood behind him. Spencer beside them both. The commander stepped to the podium. "This aircraft stood here for decades," he began, "and most of us walked past it without asking who it belonged to." He paused. "But it belonged to someone. And to someones we never got to meet. This memorial does not celebrate war. It honors those who bore its cost, and those who kept bearing it long after the flight was over." He stepped aside. Spencer took his place. "Captain Carter taught us something no policy ever could, that remembering is an action. That duty doesn't end with the uniform. It lives in what we choose to keep alive." Then he turned. "Captain?" Jim stood slowly. He walked to the wing and touched it with both hands. Then he reached into his jacket and pulled out something wrapped in cloth. A cap. He unfolded it and placed it gently on the plaque beneath the wing. The crowd hushed. Embroidered across the back, in faded yellow thread. "Phantom Flight, Carter's Crew." Then Tyler stepped forward. He cleared his throat once, looked at the rows of men and women before him. "He taught us that pilots don't just fly," Tyler said. "They bring people home. And when they can't, they make sure no one forgets who's missing." He looked at Carter. "He showed us what it means to carry memory like a mission." Behind him, the crew, now more than 20 strong, stood in formation. Each bore the same patch on their right arm. Each held a cloth folded in their palm. One by one, they stepped forward, knelt, and placed their cloth at the base of the aircraft. Then they stood in silence. Later that evening, after the crowd had gone, Carter sat on the bench beside the plane. Tyler joined him. They watched the shadows lengthen across the tarmac. "She looks clean today," Carter said. Tyler smiled. "She does." Carter leaned back slowly, bones stiff but gaze steady. "You all keep her that way. Long after I'm gone." Tyler nodded. "Yes, sir." Carter looked out at the sky, that deep blue turning silver at the edges. "She was the last thing I saw before I blacked out," he said. "That canopy, the way the light bent through it. I never told anyone." He paused. "But I still see it. Every night. Sometimes, when I wake, I reach for the throttle." Tyler said nothing. There was nothing to fix. Nothing broken. Just memory. Still alive. Still flying. That night, a storm moved in from the east. Wind lashed the field. Rain hammered the tarmac. But when the morning came, the Phantom gleamed. Someone had come during the night. And wiped her clean. Now, each sunrise glints off the Phantom's skin. The morning light catches her curves like it used to when she banked above the jungle, silent, steady, alive with purpose. But she doesn't fly anymore. She doesn't need to. Because the ones who remain carry her now. Jim Carter still comes, but not alone. He walks slower, cane in hand, cloth folded neatly beneath his arm. Tyler often meets him at the gate, already polishing, already remembering. Sometimes Carter just sits on the bench and watches. Sometimes he speaks. Once, a child approached, no older than 6, tugging at his father's hand. She pointed to the aircraft and asked, "Is that where the heroes live?" Carter didn't answer. He just smiled, soft, tired, knowing. Every day, a different name is written in the logbook. Some are old. Some are new. all remembered. And every day, a different pair of hands wipes the phantom's frame clean, as if memory itself needs tending. That's what this place has become, not a display. Not a statue. A promise. The promise that those who were lost will not vanish. That those who return will not be forgotten. That memory is a duty. And honor, real honor, is a quiet, daily act. The cloth passes from hand to hand. The polish never stops. And somewhere above, if you close your eyes, you can almost hear them, 3 voices, laughing in the canopy, calling out across the years. Still flying. Still home.